We are on the record for a review from this matter. And the names of our participants, please.
Lee Heiss, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Nastasia Thomas, counsel for the department.
Francesca Madre, foster care worker from Fostering Solutions.
Good morning, Angie Borders on behalf of respondent mother, Chanel Deakins.
Chanel Deakins.
I'm sorry, that's what I thought I said. Oh.
Yes, and she's introduced herself, so that's nice. We have Mr. Aaron Deakins.
He's supposed to be at...
Sorry, go ahead, Lee.
Oh, he's next.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you. Now I remember. Very good. All right, Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. I visited with the children at their placement, and I've also had the benefit of the investigative report from Fostering Solutions, and the children their needs are being met in the current placement, and how they do it is beyond me, but the children are very comfortable. They are stabilizing for sure. So they all have their needs are met in the current placement. I think there are definitely tweaks we can do. I was able to talk with Chanel's attorney, and I do see some things we could maybe do better. But isn't it refreshing to have a mother who's coming to the table and doing what she can? It's always frustrating, I think, when the trauma doesn't go away as fast. And I will do everything I can do to support. This is a case for reunification, but it hasn't happened yet. We're finding with the middle child, SD, that she is having, she even needs anger management. So she hasn't done her part yet on that. And we have to get right on it with these evaluations that are pending right now. And the younger fella, I think when we plan, may be able to have individual visits with mom more than with the siblings, or I have some ideas how we can do better. But anyway, for his feelings and for so that we don't lose him to this concept that he is starting to talk negatively about himself. I would ask you to consider that the middle child SD would benefit from therapeutic visits with mother, at least, maybe even with father once we get more into the case. I think that concludes my report at this time, Your Honor.
Right. Thank you. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Judge. If Ms. Madrid is sworn in. You have prepared a court report for today's hearing as relates to both Mr. and Mrs. Deakins, correct?
Yeah.
And included in that court report, in addition to the court report and the case service plans, there's an update from Catherine Cobb for Ms. Deakins, an update from Counseling of Lenaway for Ms. Deakins, then a preliminary report or quick summary on the trauma assessments, I believe, for the middle child and the youngest child, and then a forensic fluids drug screen for the father. Are there any other documents that you have circulated since you've submitted this packet to the parties?
I did include the Brene Moore recommendations in the court report, but I have not sent out those to everyone, so I'll be doing that this afternoon.
Okay. And are there any updates or modifications that need to be made to your report or the included documents?
Not at this time.
At this juncture, do you believe that there is still a substantial risk of harm to the children's well-being if they were to be returned to Ms. Deakins today?
Yes.
And can you briefly elaborate what that risk of harm is?
Yes, they may be exposed to physical discipline, improper supervision, and domestic violence.
What are some of the barriers to reunification in addition to those risks?
Yes, so currently Ms. Deakins, in relation to Ms. Deakins, she is participating and engaging in counseling and DV counseling. We would just like to see those continue and benefiting from those services. And then she did inform me today that she did secure housing, so we will be having a home visit during the next reporting period and possibly moving to visits in the home. She did complete parent education during this reporting period, and she has participated in family team meetings.
And so the barrier, if I am understanding correctly, is mostly just continuing to benefit from services.
Yes,
The compliance is, mom's fully compliant, correct?
yes,
And Ms. Heisen indicated, maybe bifurcating parenting time so the younger child could have some individual time with mom. I think there's just in general going to be some questions about parenting time. So if you can, I guess, you read your court report with the recommendations from Renee Moore, but if you can help us understand better, maybe how those recommendations came forward for mom, as far as like staggering them and the two supervised and then moving to unsupervised, and then if there's been any updates to the parenting time structure.
yes. So in the recommendation, Renee had actually wanted us to do 2 hours a week supervised for about 3 months. But right now, Ms. Deakins is receiving 4 hours a week supervised. And we will be moving towards adding more parenting time as well as possibly semi-supervised, as well as possibly visiting in her new home. As far as the children's visits, we did notice some discord between the kids and mom and allowing them to have individual time. So Ms. Deakins is visiting individually today with the youngest, and then she will be visiting with the 2 girls separately.
Do you think that for the next review period, that parenting time structure will continue separating the kiddos, or?
It really depends on how they are benefiting from it and maybe even like how they're behaving and things like that. So we would just go along with whatever is needed.
In the Samaritas reports, there's 2 summaries for 2 of the children, but not the oldest child. Is there a reason for that you're aware of?
Yes, so she was not, on the day of the assessment, they did not have an additional person for Lily, so she wasn't able to do her trauma assessment that day. So we haven't gotten the results back, but she did go at a later date and completed them.
Okay. And as far as recommendations, I'm just gonna say we're on YouTube, so no names, okay? As far as recommendations, have the referrals been made for those recommendations for services for the kiddos?
Yes, so some of the recommendations we are working on, like in the anger management recommendation for S and the recommendation for attachment therapy for S. So that will be starting in the next report period.
And as far as getting a referral for like OT for the younger child, is there anything that is being done regarding that?
That has not happened yet, no.
Okay. And were you able to review this court report with Ms. Deakins?
I did not review it with her, no.
Okay. She did. Good. Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to highlight for the court's attention today?
Not this time.
And as far as placement, they're still with relatives?
Yes.
And is there any concern that that placement might be jeopardized? Like, are they asking for the children to be removed or anything like that?
No.
Do you feel like the placement is supporting reunification with both parents?
Yes, I do.
And do you believe that they are allowing the children to have normal children lives?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. And that they're exercising the reasonably prudent parent
Yes,
standards? Okay. Yeah, and I have no further questions of Ms. Madrid. I would move to admit the court report with the attachments.
I have no objection.
No objection.
Thank you. They are received. Cross-examination, Ms. Borders?
Yes, just a little bit. Hi, Miss Madrid. How are you today?
Morning, hi.
Now, I had a little bit of a difficult time interpreting the difference between Miss Moore's report and recommendation for parenting time and what you're indicating my client will be entitled to. Can you please elaborate just more specifically regarding going forward from today? How do you intend that my client will be exercising her parenting time?
Yes, so according to the recommendation, the increase was slower, but Ms. Deakins has made progress in services and engaging in those services, and parenting time has been appropriate. So we will be moving to adding more time as far as hours. Right now she's visiting 4 hours a week. We will be moving to 6 to 8 hours a week in the next month. And then once I make a home visit, which I haven't done that yet, we may be visiting in the home as well.
In those visitations in the home, would those be supervised or unsupervised?
Supervised.
Okay, and so within the next 30 days, my client should anticipate an increase in parenting time with all 3 children to 6 to 8 hours per week?
Yes.
Okay, and then in addition to that, would there be parenting time in the home, or would you be including those hours to be in her home?
We would be including them to be in the home.
Okay, and can you state the reason why these visitations need to be supervised at this time?
Yes, so we do have concerns of Ms. Deakins' ability to manage the children's behaviors. We have had several arguments during parenting times or discord. So we are there kind of to safety net and referee really with the children and Ms. Deakins. And then as well as the concern of just ensuring that she's following that no contact order.
Okay. Now, I don't mean to nitpick here, but based on the case in the court report, you indicated for your C, as far as the case service plan, that she not violate any criminal or civil laws. You understand that any purported contact with Mr. Deakins is not a violation as to Miss Deakins of a civil or criminal law, as the no contact order is on Mr. Deakins, not on Miss Deakins.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not alleging that she's violated that provision of the case service plan. You're just noting that.
The concern, yes.
Okay. Now, otherwise though, I want to make sure she has complied with every single thing that she can comply with on the case service plan, correct?
Yes, she is compliant with services. She secured employment. She just recently made me aware of housing. So yes, she's doing really well.
Okay, I have a couple specific things. First of all, I want to ask why do you find that you believe that the current placement is supportive of reunification of the children with my client?
They have been willing to work with Ms. Deakins in scheduling appointments and communicating any needs of the children. They have told me themselves that they are in support of the children going back home as long as it's safe.
Okay. Do you have any concerns that that they have, that the family placement is Mr. Deakins' family and that they may be more inclined to impress upon reunification towards Mr. Deakins over my client?
I can understand that the relatives are Mr. Deakins' relatives, but Ms. Deakins is making progress on her case service plan towards reunification.
Okay, so you don't believe that there's any impediments, and I'm not suggesting otherwise, but toward from the placement towards my client's reunification or increased parenting time or anything like that?
No, if anything, Ms. Deakins is doing very well.
Okay, would you be agreeable to allow my client to pass journals with the older 2 children, the girls, if they were reviewed by you in passing after parenting time?
Yes, if they're reviewed by me, that's fine.
Okay, and now my client has been advised that the placement would like to take the children up north in the future, and my client is not opposed to that. She wants her children to be able to have fun, but she would like to ensure that would you be willing to build her in her, make sure she has additional, or I should say equal parenting time made up on before and after that trip so that she doesn't?
Yes.
Okay.
I would accommodate, yeah.
She does not want her children to miss out on a fun trip. She just wants to make sure she's getting the opportunity to bond. So long as you can accommodate that, I want to make sure.
Yes.
How do you feel about my client? My client pays the phone plan for the children, and the location services of the children have been shut off, as well as she's not allowed to text with them. What's your opinion about allowing for either of those 2 things to occur?
So right now we have no contact outside of visits and parenting time. But she did make me aware today of the location situation. I told her we could talk to the girls, making sure that they turn the location back on. That's not a concern.
Okay, good. That makes me feel good, just because I know she really does not want the children to leave the county. Are you aware of that?
Yes,
Okay, do you know that the children have been taken out of the county against her wishes?
she did make me aware of that, yes.
Do you also know that the children photos of them have been posted on Facebook?
She did tell me that a relative posted a photo, yes.
Can you
I'm
ensure
sorry.
that the placement knows that that's not okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And just because my client I understand it's very much a high burden to accomplish a change of placement during when there's already been one. But my client does wish that her mother be considered, since she has found alternate housing, that her mother be considered as a placement for the children. What is your position on that this time?
We can look into that in the next reporting period, yes.
Okay, thank you. There are 2 dates. I want to make sure my client has, she would like to attend a family reunion at the Hudson Webster Park on June 23rd with her children. Her sister Cheyenne Ballard can supervise that. It sounds like she's been approved to supervise, or she's appropriate. In the past, she would like permission to attend that from noon to 6 p.m. with the children. Is that agreeable with you?
Yes, as long as she just gives me that info. I don't think I have the details on that, but yeah.
Okay, and then on May 8th, there's lunch with mom at the school. Can she attend that?
Yes, we've already discussed that.
Okay, and as well as June 8th, the youngest child's graduation.
Yes,
She can do that as well?
yes.
Thank you. All right, I don't believe I have any further questions for Ms. Madrid.
Ms. Heiss?
May 8th, lunch with mom is probably the younger kid, I bet. Or is it all the children, Miss Acosta?
It's
Ms. Madrid?
the youngest child.
Yeah, okay, so that makes sense. Let's see. I read in the court report that mother lives with her mother and her mother. You guys seem to be talking about housing that I'm not aware of. Can you update me?
Yes, that's because I was just updated today, but she provided me with a purchase agreement that she purchased a trailer. So at home as it hasn't been completed, but will be completed in the next reporting period.
Does that make sense where she got money and financing for housing? Have you checked that? Because the title's in her name, right?
I haven't looked through the paperwork. I just got notified right before the hearing, so I'll have to look through it and dig for some of those answers.
Okay, and there's no policy against placement taking children outside of the county without permission,
Correct.
but out of state is different.
Yes.
Out of state, these are temporary wards. The parents would have to agree or court intervention, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then who put photos on Facebook, photos of the children?
From what I was told, it was the mother of the relative, the mother of Crystal, the
Mother of placement.
Yes.
Okay,
So
and
yeah,
then so you are continuing to recommend that there's no texting out permitted out between the parents and children, correct?
Correct. Right now, they usually text the caregiver or contact the caregiver for any updates or things like that.
Okay, there seems to be maybe a letter that I don't have. Did Brene Moore make a written recommendation? She
did. I copy pasted it into the court report, but I will send out the documents this afternoon.
That's fine. What I think I read is that her recommendation is for 2 months for mom and dad to have weekly visits, counseling sessions with Miss Moore. Then we start this 2 hour supervised once a week for 30 days and then 2 hour, the progression. Is that right or that's not right?
My understanding is that they are able to find their own service providers, and Ms. Deakins did do that, find her own service providers. We will be starting attachment therapy with kids and Renee Moore, but in the next.
Okay. I thought we had a 2 month buffer before those, only after 2 months of weekly sessions have been held, exploring why her children do not want to visit more than once a week and view her. So I thought we had 2 months of the parents counseling. No, that's not right?
No.
Okay. Complying with the service plan is one element. Benefiting from the service plan, would you characterize either parent as having completely benefited from the service plan?
No.
But they're mother's in compliance.
Correct. She is in compliance. We would just like to see her benefit from those services.
Would you be open to a meeting to regarding building a safety plan to make sure that the placement is not disparaging either parent?
Yes.
Do you feel that you've been pretty clear with placement about not disparaging the parents?
I feel I have, yes.
Do you feel that they may be responding or receiving disparaging comments from the kids about their parents?
I feel that they have heard maybe things that happened prior to coming into care. Yes.
Okay. And then also, are you open to planning around supporting like anger management for S and other visit combinations that we can do to improve their interest in reunification?
Yes.
It's not-
They're visiting separately this week.
Okay. And they are not open to reunification at this time, the older two, is that correct?
They say they do not want to go back home, yes.
Yeah. And it's your job to accomplish the goal that's been set for us, which is reunification with a parent, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect?
No, Judge, thank you.
Do we know why there's a contempt of court hearing? Well, that's for Mr. Deakins. Hold on.
Your Honor, may I just rebut or have some rebuttal questions regarding?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Madrid, thank you. I heard your response regarding my client not benefiting from the service plan, although she's in compliance. I would draw your attention to Jacqueline Miller's report on her progress. Would you disagree with Ms. Miller that my client has benefited in her individual treatment pursuant to the case service plan, and that Ms. Miller sees changes in Ms. Deakins' thinking patterns? She is becoming more aware and demonstrating what it feels like to be in her children's shoes, and that she's seeing this progress, and Ms. Miller is reporting that progress in individual therapy with Ms. Deakins?
Yes, that report was received after I made the therapist aware of Mr. and Mrs. Deakins being together. So she now knows.
But she does, but you would agree that she was benefiting from the case service plan and her thinking patterns, which are directly related to her, reason for their children being removed. Would you agree that Ms. Miller is reporting that she is benefiting from her individual therapy?
Yes, I would. She is reporting that she's benefiting, but she also continues to be engaged with Mr. Deakins despite their history of domestic violence. So I would say she's not benefiting.
Now, has it been made clear by you to Ms. Deakins prior to this, because it's not in the case service plan that she not have contact with Mr. Deakins. Does she have you now made it clear that it isn't just that she not have contact with Mr. Deakins, allow her children to have contact with Mr. Deakins, but that the department does not want her to have contact with Mr. Deakins outside of whether her children are there or not?
Yes, that has been made very clear.
Why wasn't it in the case service plan? I'm curious.
There is a portion where she is to address her domestic violence history, but I will edit the case service plan next reporting period to include absolute no contact with Mr. Deakins.
Do you also note that Kelsey Perez from Catherine Cobb has indicated that Miss Deakins has shown that she is making improvements and benefiting from their services?
Yes,
Okay, so the two people that she's currently seeing have reported benefiting from the case service plan and the treatment that's been ordered pursuant to that, correct?
correct.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Okay, any recross, Ms. Heiss?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Regarding Mrs. Deakins has not had a psychological evaluation yet, right?
Not yet, it's scheduled for Tuesday.
And when we get the results of that, you'll be sure to get that to her counselor so we can give her credit for all the progress she makes on the goals and recommendations, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Would you be able to pass along a copy of your court reports in the future to the counselor for Ms. Deakins?
Yes.
I can put that in the order. All right, thank you for your testimony. We return to your seats. Any other witnesses, Ms. Thomas? No, Judge. Ms. Borders, anyone you'd like us to hear from today?
Just briefly, if you wouldn't mind swearing my client in.
Sure. Ms. Deakins, come on up for a witness statement.
Hi. Now, Chanel, you've been ordered in, you're familiar with your case service plan, I'm assuming?
Yes, I am.
And would you say that you've been spending quite a bit of your life making your good attempts to comply with that case service plan?
Yes, I have.
And do you believe that you're beginning to benefit from the case service plan?
Yes.
Have you kept DHS apprised of your living situations and taken that?
Yes.
Have you kept them and advised of, have you kept in constant contact with Miss Madrid and had weekly contact with her?
Yes, I have.
Have you attended your parenting time with your children?
Yes, I have.
And do you agree that there has been some struggles with your parenting time
Yes.
during the parenting time? Do you wish for
Yes.
how do you wish for more parenting time with your children?
Yes, I do.
And would you feel that there would be no risk to your children if unsupervised parenting time was granted?
Yes, I believe there would be no risk.
Where would you, if you were allowed to have unsupervised parenting time, where would you suggest that be?
I would be at my grandparents right now. I'd take them to my grandparents or out in the community.
Okay. And now, have you violated any criminal or civil laws during your time under this case service plan?
No, I have not.
And have you signed all of the releases of information and complied with all of DHS's requests of you?
Yes, I have.
And have you attended the children's medical, dental, or other appointments that they've had?
Yes, I have.
And there have been some, correct?
Yes, there has.
And if you've now found some housing, you've been looking and you found some housing,
Yes.
do you believe that that's safe and appropriate for your children should they be returned to your care?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you obviously have no problem letting the worker come inspect the home and do whatever she needs to do to make sure it's appropriate?
No, I do not.
And you had originally lost your job. You ultimately communicated that to DHS, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And you immediately found another job, is that true?
Yes, I did.
And where is that?
I work at Brookside
And
Assistant.
I'm sorry, there was a little bit of a delay there.
I
And-
work at Brookside Assisted Living.
And you've been working a lot of hours there. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you're still able to make your individual therapy appointments and all of the appointments that DHS is required of you on top of working sometimes more than 40 hours per week.
Yes, I have.
And you're ready for your psychological. In fact, you wanted it moved up so you could have that before today's court hearing, correct?
Yes, I did.
But do you understand that DHS has got limited services available and they're doing their best to get you scheduled whenever they can?
Yes.
Now, do you believe that you're benefiting from your individual counseling?
Yes, I have.
Do you understand that there's never going to be a time where you are able to allow your children to be around Mr. Deakins again, with it, at least during the court's involvement, and probably going forward that relationship between Mr. Deakins and the children would be between them and not by you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any intention of bringing the children around Mr. Deakins?
No.
You're actually filed for divorce from Mr. Deakins, is that true?
Yes.
And that's proceeding in the courts?
Yes, it is.
And you intend to follow through with that divorce?
Yes, I do.
Do you have any intention of rekindling any relationship with Mr. Deakins at this time?
No, I do not.
Do you understand that it's in your children's best interest for you to not do that?
Yes, I do.
What is your children's best interest the most important thing in your life right now?
Yes, my children are my number one. There's nothing that comes before them.
If I were to ask you today, what you're requesting from the court as far as your children, what would your request be?
For them to come home as soon as possible.
Now, do you understand that right now the girls are struggling with visitations and not wanting to do that as often as you do?
Yes, I understand that because they've been through this once before, and this is very traumatic for them. And I can't take back that trauma. I can help them try to move forward and beyond it, but it's never going to go away. It's always going to be there.
And are you willing to participate in a therapeutic counseling with them if it's ordered, or even if it's not, anything that would help repair that relationship between you and your girls?
Yes, I am.
And if the court were to allow you to have a little bit more time with your youngest, I'm not saying names, would you want that?
Yes, I would take any extra time with each one of my children alone if it would help each one of them.
Now, Chanel, I know you've indicated this to me, and it's likely not going to be decided by the court today, but do you wish for placement to be different for your children?
Yes, I do.
And where do you wish your children were placed?
With my mother.
And right now you live with your mother, is that true?
Yes, but I have another place to go.
So even if you don't move into the trailer, you could go to your stepfather's home in Adrian and have your mother would not have anybody else in the home, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And it's not so much that you have anything against their current placement, you just feel that it would be better that your children were with your mother, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further for my client.
Ms. Thomas?
I have no questions.
Ms. Heiss?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We return I'm sorry if I missed this, but is there no preliminary report on Lilith or on one of the children?
Correct. That was the one where the service provider did not have staff to do the 3 children at the same time. So hers happened later and we don't have a report yet. Okay.
All right. Anyone else you'd like me to hear from, Ms. Borders?
No, thank you.
Ms. Heiss?
No witnesses today. Thank you.
All right, comments as it relates to the review for Ms. Deakins.
Thank you, Judge. I know that there was a lot of discussion about parenting time. I'll just remind the court, I know the court takes a lot of notes and does not need reminding, but for the record, that was the recommendations by Renee Moore were ordered by the court. And it has been, I guess, not even followed by our team because we have belief in mom's parenting and have increased that for her despite those recommendations. And so at this time, I think that it's appropriate to leave as is with that, especially without having that full trauma assessment. And if there were bonding components to that trauma assessment without the psychological evaluation, I think it's a little premature to make a significant change to the parenting time recommendations. And as it relates to the risk of harm, I know that there was testimony about mom's compliance, and it is refreshing to have a parent who's in full compliance. The concerns remain. The reason the children came into care were for sort of this perpetuated cycle of domestic violence, and maintaining contact, even if it's minimal, and especially with the knowledge of why the children came into care, especially for a second time, and knowing the criminal proceedings were happening, it doesn't really speak to benefit services at this time. So we believe that the risk of harm is still there for the children. They are not able to be returned today. We would ask for another 90-day review. Thank you.
Comments, Ms. Borders?
Your Honor, I do respect the position of DHS. But I would like to draw the court's attention to the fact that my client has very little allegations against her in the petition, other than the fact that she was herself a victim of domestic violence. And I think the court is well aware of the lasting effects that that can have on her as well. She certainly has, even today in court, acknowledged how that has affected her children. I disagree that she's not benefiting from the case service plan. I think that she is strongly benefiting from the case service plan. She's obtained suitable housing, or housing that's later to be determined whether it's suitable or not, but she's obtained her own housing. She's getting a divorce from a long-lasting relationship because her children are so important to her. She's following through with the divorce. She is attending all of her parenting time, and those parenting times are as appropriate as they possibly can be, at least on my client's part. She's benefiting in individual therapy. She's benefiting in domestic violence counseling. The only reason why she hasn't had a psychological done is because, unfortunately, I'm not blaming DHS. We understand the services are limited here, but she just hasn't had an opportunity to do that. She has literally done every single thing that there can possibly be in order to comply with the case service plan. It was not in the case service plan that she could not have any contact with Mr. Deakins. And there was one incident in which she met him at a public location in order to wash a dog. She was forthcoming, not initially necessarily to DHS about that, but to me, and ultimately with DHS within an hour or a day, about what really happened there. She doesn't understand, though, that what that message does send to her children. And I think that there will not be any problem with that going forward. She's doing very good for somebody who's been in a relationship like this for so long. She very much wants to have as much time as possible with the children. I ask that the court order the DHS to continue providing her liberal parenting time. And I would like to see a review set a little bit sooner than 90 days so that she could build on that parenting time sooner than later. Right now, I understand the court's not going to be inclined to change a placement without more on this matter, but it is her desire. And I'm grateful to DHS for considering that before the next review hearing as well.
Ms. Heiss?
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, the one very important element that comes through from the petition is that the children worry when the mom and dad are together. And unfortunately, they had that, they visually saw mom and dad together. We're going to need to build trust, and we're going to need to support the kids in understanding that the old things aren't going to happen again, and we can get there. It is our duty to reunite these children with their parents. That is the goal from the court, and it is our duty. But I would ask you to consider that at this point, because of that very recent, I think it was maybe tax day, April 15th or 14th or something like that. So it's a very recent event that the kids saw the parents together. I'm not sure that Miss Moore knew that when making her recommendations. So if you would, I think we should leave the visits at the discretion of the agency. We started with a whole lot of visits, and then we're down to less, but it is definitely the intent to reunify this family, and visits would support the bond, but it has to be done right. As we know, maybe Mrs. Deakins hasn't been through these cases, but as we know, if we granted her wish, she might not like what happens. That's the only reason we think we should go slowly and make sure the children behave when they're with her and have their anger issues under control, and all those other things. But when mom doesn't text between reviews and doesn't reach out to the kids, that builds their trust that mom's following the rules. And they're looking for that. They're looking that there's rules and structure in place and that it's a new day for everybody. So we'll keep working on that. And I ask you to set the next review.
Thank you. Well, the court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review hearing, at least for this piece, as well as the next piece, which we'll be doing for Mr. Deakins separately. As it relates to Ms. Chanel Deakins, she's engaged in services. Reasonable efforts are being made towards the goal of reunification. Ms. Heiss is in satisfaction of her obligations as guardian ad litem as well.
Thank you.
It's important, Ms. Deakins, for you to understand that when you appear in public with Mr. Deakins to do something as mundane as wash the dog, it appears to the court and to the people that are trying to help you build those healthy boundaries that you're not being forthright about your efforts. When I get a bunch of letters saying that you're doing so great and everything that you're saying in therapy is right and you're able to demonstrate those skills, but then you're still seeing Mr. Deakins, that's a real concern on your credibility piece. So I have, it's going to be difficult for me as a court to allow you to have unsupervised contact with your children for a long time until we all know, frankly, that these kids are going to be safe and secure against further exposure to domestic violence. I appreciate that you are engaged in your therapy, but if you don't have an intention of actually making cold, hard change here, please don't waste our resources. I'm being absolutely frank with you because the initial assessments that we've got back from your kids, what they're saying to their therapist, how they're behaving, it's very clear that they've been through a lot in a household where you were a responsible adult for a very long period of time. And they have some very serious challenges to overcome because of the environment that was created by you and Mr. Deakins. So I shouldn't have to tell you that you shouldn't be seen with Mr. Deakins in public washing the dog. That's a very serious issue that signals to all of the care providers and the service providers that there's continuing issues here. So basically at this point, with this court, you're kind of back to zero. So I'm not trying to be mean, but I feel like I owe you the truth here. My job is to safeguard your children from further exposure to domestic violence, to get them into a situation where they can process what they've been through and develop the skills that they're going to need to overcome diagnoses that they will have for the rest of their lives. I take that very seriously. And I hope you do too. The parenting time will be at the discretion of Brene Moore. I think that she's going to be able to give us feedback. I would expect Ms. Madrid to talk with Ms. Brene Moore to give her copies of everything that we are seeing come out of the counselors and the assessments and everything else. And if you can convince her that she should have the parenting time that she has, then so be it. Otherwise, I trust our professional. She has a lot of credentials behind her name, especially around the trauma interventions that these kids need. So that will be the parenting time moving forward from Ms. Deakins. And those are my comments for today. I'll have the order ready for you in a few minutes. The children are in the safest and least restrictive environment considering the circumstances as outlined by this court and Ms. Madrid today. And we'll have our next review. Unfortunately, I don't have anything sooner than 90 days out. There's a lot of people taking a lot of time off in June and July. So the soonest we will have for our next review will be out to June 15th at 1:30 p.m. Ms. Borders, are you available?
June 15th is up.
Oh, sorry, July 15th. July 15th at 1:30.
I'm available. July 15th at 1:30. It's a Monday.
Yes, the
Okay.
15th at 1:30. All right. Record to conclude the rest of the review on this case for the father. May I have the names of our participants?
Lee Heiss, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Ms. Sasha Thomas, counsel for the department.
Francesca Madrid, foster care worker, foster solutions.
Michael Brooks, I represent the father, Aaron Deakins. Mr. Deakins.
Aaron Deakins, I'm the father.
Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. I visited with the children at their placement and S is grumpy. I'm only kidding. But Dad will know that I really did see the kids when I tell him that the oldest child is cooperative in the home and helpful. They have some new pets, little baby ducks, and they indicate to me that they've raised ducks in the past. And the children are cooperative with the ducks and helpful, and not to the extent that one will clean up the duck discharge for the other, but that they take turns with the ducks, and that S is very protective of her little brother. And so it was nice to watch the children doing that activity. The home is meeting all of the kids' needs. The little guy wants to visit with parents as much as he can, and the older children are progressing towards that. The two girls are, all their needs are being met in the current placement, but this is a case for reunification. It's not appropriate at this time to reunify, but I think we should follow Brene Moore's recommendation in the court report for increasing visits for Dad. Thank you.
I have a rhetorical question I'd like to bring up. How do you cooperate with a duck without drowning in the pond where they spend most of their time?
I'll trust you to investigate that cross-examination perhaps. Witness testimony, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Madrid, I called back to the stand. Yep, right, Ms. Madrid, I know that you just testified, so we'll just revisit some of the same things. There were no updates or modifications that need to be made to your court report, correct?
Not at this time.
Okay, and as it relates to father, can you briefly explain whether you believe there's still risk of harm if the children were to be in his care and custody today? And if you do have that belief, can you please provide what that risk of harm would be?
Yes, so the children could be exposed to physical abuse, domestic violence, and improper supervision. Right now, the barriers are that Mr. Deakins needs to re-engage in services, which he was engaged in services, and then just had some miscommunication or didn't follow through. So he was discharged from Catholic Charities, but I was noted today that he will be engaging with CMH.
Witness, could you speak up a little for my?
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, you said that you'd be re-engaging with services through CMH?
Yes, he said he has an appointment next week, I believe. He can give more information on that. But yes, he will be engaging with CMH.
Okay. And so for the reasons that the children came into care, has there been any progress from Mr. Deakins' perspective regarding addressing domestic violence, anger management, parenting skills, anything of that sort?
Mr. Deakins did complete a Love and Logic in-person parenting class at Springwood Middle School. Other than that, he will be starting domestic violence therapy and individual therapy again.
That would be the CMH services you're giving
Yes, as well as DVAP.
For those who might not know, or for the record, DVAP.
Domestic violence awareness perpetrator.
Okay. I know that there was a lot of testimony at our first segment of this hearing regarding parenting time. What is the current parenting time recommendation by Ms. Moore, and what parenting time is actually taking place?
Yes, so by Ms. Moore, it is recommended that he have the visitation increase as long as he's compliant with services. We have not increased parenting time, so he's still at 2 hours a week supervised.
And where is that parenting time taking place?
At the office.
How is parenting time going?
Mr. Deakins' interactions are appropriate. He's provided appropriate meals and redirects the children appropriately.
Has there been any conflict with his parenting time and the children?
Nothing significant, no.
And if there is he able to redirect as needed?
Yes, he has been.
Okay. And his redirection is appropriate?
Yes.
Okay. Has the psychological referral been scheduled for him?
Yes.
Okay, and that will take place soon?
Yes. The date is in the court report. It's in June.
Are there any services that you've made referrals for that would help address any of the barriers to reunification?
Yes, we did make the referral for the Love and Logic parenting education in Catholic Charities. And CMH he's going to be re-engaging with, and we also indicated that he needed to start DVAP.
Have you had any issues like obtaining any of like the releases of information or anything like that from Mr. Deakins?
No.
He's been fairly cooperative with you?
Yes.
Okay. And is there anything that you would like to bring to the court's attention as relates to Mr. Deakins and the children?
Not at this time.
And the drug screen that's provided for him, it was clean, correct?
Yes.
And are there any other concerns about substance use?
No.
Okay. That's all I have for Ms. Madrid, Your Honor. And I would ask the court to continue to accept the court report and the attachments.
I have no objection.
I have no objection.
Thank you, they are received. Cross-examination, Mr. Brooks?
Mr. Deakins has been cooperative with you.
Yes.
He's been cooperative with the programs which the case service plan requires that he deal with. Is that correct?
He is aware of the services that he needs to engage in.
Why is that a different answer than my question?
He hasn't cooperated as far as engaged in the services and completed them, but he knows what he needs to do.
Based on his history, do you think he's going to do it?
Based on Catholic Charities discontinuing him from those services, I would have to see in the next reporting period if he follows through.
He gets what, 2 hours a week?
Yes.
How do those visits go?
The visits are appropriate.
Is there some reason he can't have more than 2 hours a week? If he can do it?
According to Renee's recommendation, we would be following that pretty strictly. And she indicated he would need to be engaging in services and benefiting from them for parenting time to increase.
Is that something that's on the docket for what's to follow here from today?
Yes, he has a CMH appointment.
So there's room for improvement, but the path is clear how to do it.
Correct.
How do the kids seem to react to their dad when he visits?
The kids are very bonded with Dad.
Are the ducks behaving?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Ms. Heiss?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Madrid. With respect to fathers, I can't find it in my notes, but I feel like Mother went to that same parenting class at Springbrook, didn't she?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
I think it interfered with her parenting time.
Okay. Thank you for, that was on my mind. And I think that's all my questions. One more thing. Did Dad take accountability for the contact at Tractor Supply Company or whatever?
I have not discussed that yet with him. We had it scheduled, but it just didn't pan out yet.
Okay, thank you. Do you know if he's compliant with his medications through CMH for mental health?
Yes.
Very good. And how do you know? Self-report?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Nothing further.
Did you say that you have it scheduled or had it scheduled to talk to him about that?
We did. I just didn't. I'm not sure why it didn't happen. But I gave him a call and he didn't answer, and I just kind of followed through with it.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you for clarifying. All right, any redirect or recross for this witness?
I just one question following up on the in-person incident between Mom and Dad. Much was made about that in Mom's portion of the hearing. And, you know, I think it's acknowledged that those are the conditions as relates to father. And if he violates them, then that's on him in the criminal aspect. Do you know if there's any legal repercussions pending?
I was updated on his criminal case and I added that in the court report. I haven't gotten updated since then.
Okay. Are you aware of any other violations of bond conditions or probationary terms that he might be subject to?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, Mr. Brooks, any recross?
No.
Ms. Heiss?
None. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We are returning your seat. Anyone else you'd like me to hear from?
No, Judge.
Mr. Brooks?
I've asked my client, he said he does not wish to testify. What has been reported is accurate.
Ms. Heiss, anyone you'd like me to hear from?
No, thank you.
Comments?
I have no comments, Judge, in addition to the ones I've already made. Thank you.
Mr. Brooks?
Well, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? We really sort of ask that question in every case. And I would submit it's half full and getting better. And I think we just got to keep on keeping on. He's narrowing down the issues he has to address. He's doing it. He's cooperative. Things are going well with the visitations. He's consistent. This is what we want to see. And I would hope in the very near future, he's getting more parenting time. And beyond that, terminating this case.
Ms. Heiss?
Thank you, Your Honor. Dad is doing many things well, and I didn't want to undo that note of progress, but I do want to say in closing that if he is still having interest in having a relationship with mom, that's something that he needs to address. And if he's interested in having contact with mom, and if they're continuing a relationship, I'm just saying if, I'm not saying that I put him under oath and asked him, but that's a problem. So it's a awful problem to have if you're in love with someone and that's unhealthy. But it is a fact that in this case, we need Dad to honor his no contact clause with mother. And I just wanted to emphasize that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, again, the court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review hearing. Mr. Deakins, I have reviewed the attachments to the court report, which I'm sure you have as well. Your children have some very serious challenges ahead of them as a result of the environment that you and your wife created for them. The incident that just happened where the two of you were effectively breaking your no contact and for something as mundane as washing the dog indicates, as I shared with Ms. Deakins, that neither of you are really taking this seriously. There are a ton of services out there. There are a ton of education services out there, and you have bond conditions and a violation coming up. So I'm just gonna share with you the truth, which is that if neither of you are interested in these services, then you might as well stop wasting our time. This is a very serious thing that you've created with these kids, and it's going to take a long time for them to develop the skills that they need in order to live with the diagnoses that they have as a result of the significant period of time that they lived with you and Ms. Deakins. So if you want to do this, you need to get back into counseling immediately, honor the no contact, and get serious.
I am.
Don't tell me that. Show me that. And that's easier than how I delivered it to Ms. Deakins. So the other reason that you may want to consider honoring what you're being asked to do is if you do care for Ms. Deakins, then you need to step away and follow your no contact and do the education that you need to do in order to create a healthy environment for your children. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm looking at. So it's either there or it isn't. You're at your first review. We'll have our next review in 3 months, July 15th at 2:30. There will also be a permanency planning hearing, wherein I will look at whether or not you are working towards reunification or if we need to look at an alternative permanency planning goal like adoption or juvenile guardianship for your children, period. Reunification efforts are being made, spearheaded by Ms. Madrid. We've gone over those. Ms. Heiss is in satisfaction of her obligations as well. July 15th is our next review and permanency planning hearing. The review as it relates to Chanel Deakins first, followed by the review as it relates to Mr. Deakins. And we're getting started a little bit later than scheduled, so thank you to everyone for your patience. And I look forward to the updates after appearances.
Lee Heiss, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Ms. Sasha Thomas, counsel for the department. Ms. Madrid.
Francesca Madrid, foster care worker from Fostering Solutions.
Angie Borders on behalf of Chanel Deakins.
Sounds good. Your name for the record?
Chanel Deakins.
Thank you. Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. I visited with the children in person a few times during visits with mom. My overall comments are going to aim at convincing you that it's time for Stormy to be reunified with mom. So because it's the best solution to some problems that have happened, the other two children would remain in care and increasing visits. But I want to let you know that Stormy has been dysregulated. She has been self-harming again. As the reports tell you in 2023, that it's continuing, it's resurfacing. The CTAC that you'll see in the packet is old. It's only March of 2024, but so much has happened. So in March, she wouldn't see mom to do a bonding assessment. And her bonding assessment with dad was secure attachment. But since then, Stormy is just getting more and more aggressive with the other children. She's got a potty mouth. She has been to the hospital for mental health treatment. She has directly told me that she wants to be home with her mother. When she gets dysregulated, she wants to be home with her mother. Now, I'm not proposing we give a child what she wants for that only reason. There is a pet of hers that's special to her, a guinea pig at her mom's house and some dogs, and she is articulating that she has mental health control, but she has to have control over something, that she can control herself with the self-harming, but she wants some control. She wants to be a mom. She is 13 years old. Dad has a house and a secure attachment with this child, and he has employment, and he's doing his domestic violence program and that kind of stuff, but he is on domestic violence, the 3rd dose of treatment for that, and I have not researched what might be a solution. So I would ask that we have a family team meeting to follow what Brene Moore has said, which is that Mom and Stormy should continue in their conjoint therapy. That aligns with the CTAC. So Brene indicates that Stormy is the parent over Mom, that Stormy and Mom would have to work out a safety plan regarding a lot of different things. But so Stormy's going to trigger Mom, who is Mom's safety plan, that she's going to call this person, then that person, then the other person. She's going to reach out. She's going to do different things. I think we need to develop boundaries and rules for the house so that Stormy knows that her mom has support for enforcing those consequences. Anyway, I think the placement is insecure for Stormy, and the other 2 kids have been pinched and bullied and cussed out enough that I think they'll do better when school starts if they have a break from Stormy. And the placement is willing to keep Lily and Connor. Stormy really is communicating through her behavior that she's really not okay in the placement. She says the placement would help things. I think we should give her a chance, mostly because the placement, I don't want the placement disrupted for everybody. I've been to Mom's house several times. Mom lives with the grandma, and so there are 2 maternal figures there. Mom works full time, but grandma is there and very invested in the kids doing the right thing. I've seen even a great grandma or great grandma to the kids who visited, so extended family in and out of the house. They have pets, they have lots of food, lots of healthy food. I mean, there are a lot of strengths in Mom's house. I'm not denying that Brene Moore is accurate in her assessment that it might not work. So anyway, Lily is really a lovely child, and she's not disruptive, the report says, but she is being disrupted. Stormy just doesn't let up, and Lily is trying to speak, and she's more soft-spoken, and I think this would be really helpful for her. All these kids are good students at their levels. Lily's also showing a secure attachment with Dad, but Dad still needs independent housing. Lily's participating in MYOI, all these great things. Connor's 6, and he has some counseling sessions with Stormy. So it's amazing that people the caseworker's already on top of all these suggestions. He has a secure attachment with Dad, but he also has a secure attachment with Mother. I think Connor would choose to go home if he could. But I think that Stormy deserves Mom's attention for a minute and for best success for all of them. Okay, and then Dad, he has completed the Parkside Parent Education course, and he's now in another course, but a lot of strengths. We have to make sure that they're not having contact, because it really blows the trust of everybody. It almost seems like in some of our families, the mom and dad weren't good for each other, and it took this much resources for us to get them to separate. It's not easy. Mom listens to country songs and hears his name in there, about breakups and stuff. I'm not saying it's easy, but it really destroys the trust that the kids have in the system and their parents. And so I think those things are in the best interest of the kid and kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony today, Ms. Thomas, and I just want to remind everybody we are also set for permanency planning.
Thank you, Honor. Ms. Deakins, would you like to testify today?
If she were to testify, she would like to be called. If you need her to testify, otherwise she does not have any need to testify.
Okay. With that, Your Honor, then I'll call I'll call Ms. Madrid then. Thank you.
All right, proceed at will.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Madrid. You have provided the court with a court report and some attachments, and I just want to confirm those with you. So there is the case service plan that's attached to one document and then a Catholic Charities letter that's also attached, but then the trauma assessments are in a separate document. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And were there any other documents that were circulated since you've provided these to the court and the parties?
No, not since the court report that was submitted on 7/31, I believe it was.
Great, thank you. And for, as it relates to the court report or any of the attachments, are there any updates or modifications that you're aware of that need to be made?
Yes, primarily the concern that Ms. Lee or Ms. Tice brought up as far as Stormy goes. She did experience last week some mental health concerns. She did get transported to the hospital by ambulance. Ms. Deakins was able to be there with her, meeting her needs. Due to that and just continual behavioral issues, the caregiver did ask for her to be moved, for all of the children to be moved, but was able to process through things and decided that she's not able to meet Stormy's needs. And that is kind of the reason we presented the plan to Ms. Tice and to Ms. Deakins and all parties to see if it would be in Stormy's best interest to move with mom and get that one-on-one attention to make sure she's stabilized emotionally and then bring the other children.
Generally speaking, how would you describe mother's compliance with and benefit from her case service plan during this review period?
Generally speaking, she is very compliant with her case service plan. Everything on her case service plan she's addressing. Besides Stormy's most recent mental health crisis, we would be moving to unsupervised visits.
And I know that in your court report, there is an indication of parenting time. Mom is attending all parenting time, is very prepared to ensure that children's needs are met. Is that parenting time continued to be supervised right now? I guess I was a little unclear.
Right now it is supervised, but we will be moving to semi-supervised and unsupervised in the next reporting period.
Okay. And at this point in time, your recommendation is that given the middle child's heightened needs, that you would like for her to be returned to mother's care and custody?
Yes.
And mother's housing is appropriate and she maintains stable employment and all of that is going well?
Yes.
Okay. As it relates to the trauma assessment for the children, have you been able to review those with the parents during this review period?
We have.
Okay. And are they doing anything regarding those recommendations, like any of the resources that were recommended to them? Have they reviewed them or started to look at those with the children?
Yes. We've been able to provide the recommended books. Both of the children that were recommended for individual therapy do have individual therapy, and Stormy Willie receives therapy through Family Medical. And then we also, I know that Ms. Deakins worked on a OT referral, and she was, I believe, waiting on their pediatrician to send over the referral. So OT as well, it will be starting for both Stormy and Connor.
Ms. Heiss indicated support for the agency's recommendation of the middle child going to mom, and then indicated some of the risks of harm to the other children. Do you have anything to add to that, or would you like to just state your opinion on the risks of harm to the other children if they were to be returned to mom right now?
Yes, so primarily I would say Stormy's emotional instability is assessing the risks of harm to the other children. She needs one-on-one attention to ensure that her needs are being met currently. And then we do have some concerns of the parents still having contact.
With the parents' contact, does that pose a risk to Stormy, who you're recommending to go home?
I do not believe so. Stormy has been adamant from the beginning that she did not want her parents to be together. And she has been very open and honest about any kind of incident that she has witnessed or seen. Like when Mr. Deakins' car was at Ms. Deakins' home, she immediately reported that to me. So I do believe that she would be able to let some individual know in her life if that becomes an issue.
Is there a recommendation? So right now there's sort of this no contact order in our court regarding the parents, but it sounds like from the criminal case that's been modified so the parents can discuss parenting time with the children. do you have a recommendation as to how the parents can navigate parenting time if one of the children is with mom but needs parenting time with dad, like how that should be navigated?
We would definitely have a family team meeting to discuss scheduling parenting time, and we would move towards working on their parenting, like co-parenting situation, especially based off of the divorce and what comes from that. We would want to see them eventually be able to communicate regarding their children in a positive, healthy manner. But we would take on most of that scheduling if Stormy's return home.
Is there anything else that you would like to highlight from your court report or from the attachments that you provided regarding Ms. Deakins' progress or any of the children?
No.
Okay, and your recommendations still indicate that the permanency goal reunification is appropriate for the family. Has there been any change to that?
No.
Thank you. With that, Your Honor, I have no further questions on Ms. Madrid and would move to admit the court report with the attachments.
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you, they are received. So I'm reading through the updates as it relates to Ms. Deakins. And there's an extensive section where the psychological evaluation is quoted. Can you tell me what's being done to address those recommendations?
I know that the psychological eval was provided to both her DV counselor at Catherine Cobb as well as her counseling of Lenawee therapist. And that was reviewed with her therapist and Ms. Deakins. So I believe they are addressing that.
So she's still doing domestic violence counseling with Catherine Cobb?
Yes.
And then-
And counseling of Lenawee, Jacqueline Miller.
Is she been provided with the materials that were recommended by Dr. Haugen to work through with her counselors?
Yes.
And when's the last time you heard from the counselors?
I received an updated report for this report that was submitted on 7/31. In there.
Okay, questions, Ms. Borders?
Yes, please. Hi, Ms. Madrid. I'm gonna try to go a little easy on you today. Now, just to kind of piggyback off of what the court just inquired upon, I do want to ask a couple questions about that psych eval. Are you aware that Mr. Deakins got a full, my client's entire psych evaluation?
I am aware that both parties received the court report that was last sent out back in May.
Prior to that, between the court report, are you aware that Mr. Deakins actually has a copy of the entirety of the psych evaluation report from my client?
I am aware of that, yes.
Your Honor, and I'm so sorry to interrupt, Ms. Borders, but Your Honor, I don't know when the appropriate time is. I just, based on the line of questioning, I know that there is concern about who is getting what with court reports. And I just want to inform Ms. Borders that I have instructed my team that per court rule, all parties get the full court report absent a protective order, which we don't have in this case, to my understanding. And so I just wanted to say, like, we are aware of this concern, and it is something that we intended to address with the court in closing arguments.
And Your Honor, to answer that, I respect what you, Ms. Thomas's input, and I was actually laying a foundation to ask for that protective order, and that is why I was asking this line of questioning. But because she noted that, I think I can bypass that and move on. So thank you. Now, as far as Ms. Deakins' progress within the case service plan goes, I just want to, I think it's important to note that as of the last, when we were at the last review hearing, the real concern was that there was that one contact with Mr. Deakins, correct?
Correct.
Otherwise, she was completely compliant with everything you were asking her to do.
Yes.
And she was appropriate to the extent she had the capabilities of being at that time, correct? Correct. And since that time, between the last court hearing and this review hearing, you have heard a word from Stormy that she may have, that a vehicle may have been at my client's house, but you have actually no proof that they have had any contact. Isn't that true?
Besides, there is a photo of Mr. Deakins' car at Ms. Deakins' home, but there, I mean, yes.
Okay. And Ms. Deakins did not request, is it your understanding Ms. Deakins herself did not request to have the bond conditions in the criminal case removed, but rather that was a request from the prosecutor's office to Ms. Deakins?
It's my understanding at our home visit, she said that they asked her and that she agreed.
Yes, okay. So it was something that was kind of prompted by them and not her, correct?
Based off of what she told me, yes.
Okay, and you have nothing to contradict that? Is it?
No, because
Okay.
I wasn't there.
And as far as her case service plan, I just kind of went through it. I don't want to go through every single paragraph, but she is compliant with every single term, either completed or is in the progress of completing at this time, correct?
Yes.
And not only are you receiving reports from the counselors and various treatment providers that she has benefited from those programs?
Yes.
And not only is she in counseling, but she's actually in 3 different forms of counseling, isn't she?
Yes.
So is it your understanding she's in individual counseling with Jacqueline Miller, DV counseling with Catherine Cobb, and a new support group that she's now in for domestic violence that she got into on her own?
Yes, I believe that is through Catherine Cobb, but yes.
Yeah, through Catherine Cobb as well, yes. Now, and she's completed all of her bonding trauma assessments?
Yes.
Following through with any recommendations there?
Yes, yes.
And she's showing progress, or I'm sorry, as far as her psych evaluation and the recommendations, I know the court asked you about that. Is she showing progress, not just compliance, but progress in some of those needs that she has?
Yes, I have seen acknowledgement and progress during this reporting period.
That was my next question. You yourself have actually witnessed her setting some boundaries that you didn't think she was capable of doing in the past, absent these interventions, correct? Correct. Now, I do know how you feel about this, but I do want to address this. If Miss Deakins is appropriate enough, having had her children removed from her care for over 7 months now, with the understanding that she's so compliant and making such good progress within her case service plan, and appropriate enough to have Stormy return to her care, why is she not appropriate enough to have Lily and Connor return to her care as well?
So that is a good question. The main concern right now is Stormy's significant emotional instability, and Ms. Deakins has made enough progress to allow her to be that option, that primary option for Stormy, because we do have requests to have her moved. So instead of looking at other avenues like a foster home or residential home, we would place her with mom if allowed. And that is just because she's being aggressive with her other siblings, and we would not want to set up mom for failure where Stormy's having such significant behaviors that she's not able to manage them, and then bringing in more children may cause more dysfunction in the home. So I think stabilizing Stormy and addressing them one-on-one. Renee is also willing to go to the home and work on that. I am going to be doing weekly home visits if allowed. And then we would move towards bringing in the other children because she is doing so well.
Okay, and with that being said, would it be something that could warrant an earlier review period to have that reunification with the other 2 children within 30 to 45 days if she's doing well with Stormy?
I don't see why not. Yeah.
Okay, and you did mention as pertains to visitation that you're going to be moving to unsupervised / semi-supervised. I don't know what semi-supervised means. Can you describe what you
Yes, so we would start off with just having the visit worker check in periodically every 15 to 20 minutes, making sure there's no needs or anyone doesn't need anything. And then a couple weeks of that goes well, we will move to completely unsupervised.
Okay, and how about the duration and frequency of the visits? Is that going to change?
That would be expanded just as every reporting period has expanded.
Okay, so your intentions as of right now are to ask the court to reunify Stormy with my client.
Yes.
Increase the frequency and duration of visitation and move toward unsupervised visitation with some semi-supervised visitation initially.
Yes.
Okay, and then you would not be opposed, you do believe it would be appropriate to set an earlier review period to review reunification for the other 2 children?
Yes.
And I mean, if things aren't going well, we can make that decision at the time, right?
Yes.
Okay. I do not believe I have any further questions.
Things aren't 100% great at mom's house. Would you agree?
As far as
Like, we want this for Stormy, but there are some concerns. Yes?
yes,
So Renee has articulated concerns, right?
Renee has articulated concerns with the parent-child dynamic.
The CTAC evaluator has articulated concerns.
Yes.
And that was in March, but Renee's was more current, right?
Yes.
There is a supervisor in the home who gives you reports, and you summarize those for us, but you gotta say, there's some chaos in those reports.
Yes, visits definitely can be chaotic. Yes.
Have we assessed any other placement concept for Stormy?
Not at this time, no.
Hoping to avoid that,
Yes,
because her behavior might not be better if she were in foster care or residential or any other thing.
correct.
You're open to assessing dad's home. I know he wants to wait for his own independent housing, but you would look at that for Stormy since her attachment to him is secure?
I can, yes.
So without getting into a lot of negatives, there are negatives there.
Yes,
So we're not saying that mother has progressed and benefited from services to the extent that reunification with all three kids is a healthy, good idea.
correct. It would be in Stormy's best interest to stabilize her and make sure that mom is able to be the authoritative parent to her first. Because it doesn't seem like she has that issue with Lady Connor. It just seems like it's with Stormy.
So progress is sufficient enough to have her start practicing her skills with Stormy in the home, correct? Do you believe it's in the best interest of Lily and Connor to not be placed with mom at this time?
Yes,
And so these evaluations that we're getting from Catherine Cobb and Lenawee Counseling regarding mom, they're not giving us what the goals are and what the progress is on those goals. And hopefully the goals would match the psych evaluation. Why are we not getting that report?
I don't have a good answer for that. I am just receiving what the therapist, I asked for a detailed report, including attendance and progress on goals, and that's what I received.
So has anybody talked to you about the lawnmower exchange, dad being at mom's house?
Yes, I do, and I am aware of that.
So he was there, but it was not at mom's invitation.
Correct.
So, in your consideration of all the facts, some of which we have, and so much of it you very well paraphrased into the court report, you're asking that Stormy we have a family team meeting to make up some boundaries about Stormy living with mom. You've been available like after hours to Stormy and really talked her through a lot of her problems lately, right?
Yes,
And you made decisions on the fly about letting mom go to the hospital to calm Stormy?
yes, I did.
And mom's been to a lot of the medical appointments and those kinds of things? Mom's house is clean and appropriate?
It is.
In those supervisor notes, is there anything else you think the judge should know about specifically? Anything else that's standing out? I know you've summarized it, but we don't have those individual reports.
There's just continual instances where it's apparent that the authority between Stormy and mom is not all there. And a lot of the time, Stormy is kind of like taking charge or making the rules or just struggling with like hearing no from mom. So there have been like several of those instances where it's just not been appropriate.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, so what I have is the court report, the trauma assessments, and then this, which is a Catholic Charities letter that appears to be printed the wrong way and is kind of just half. I don't know if I can got the whole thing, and it looks like it's about Aaron Deakins, not about Mrs. Deakins.
I might have, it is for Mr. Deakins.
Okay, so I see that there are some remarks in your court report from the therapists that appear to be working with Ms. Deakins. Are there original letters or emails that go with this, or is it just the quotes here? Where, like, how did this information come to you?
It wasn't sent to me email, so I just copy pasted it.
Okay.
But I have it attached as an attachment, all those original letters.
I also did attach it to the very first court report that was sent out back in May.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Before this hearing was adjourned, there was a court report that was sent out.
Okay.
And then I also sent a new court report. There wasn't many changes to it. The only letter that I attached was the Catholic Charities one because I got that one late.
All right. I'll never explain why I have some missing pieces. Because all I have is the 7/31/2024 report. Okay, let's see if we can't track down the one that was received in May. Redirect, Ms. Thomas?
Sorry, and I was also trying to find in my documents the May court report. But with that, I don't have anything at this time. Thank you.
Any additional questions, Ms. Borders?
One. I apologize. Now, as far as Ms. Heiss's inquiry regarding the concerns that Renee Moore has regarding my client, those actually really focus around her bond, and her concerns are focused on the relationship between my client and Stormy, correct?
Yes,
Not the other children.
correct.
So although my client remains to struggle, I suppose, if that's how we're gonna word it, in that area, it's with the child you're recommending be returned to her, correct?
Yes, to focus on that specifically.
Yes, and now, but not the other two children, and she's progressing in every other way, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I understand your reasoning. I'm not trying to ridicule you for that decision. I understand it. So do you believe that it would be appropriate to in order to not set my client up to be overwhelmed with the needs that Stormy currently is expressing, to taper reunification by getting Stormy in there stabilized and then reviewing the situation further to allow for the other two children to be returned?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that you could recommend to further protect my client from unsolicited contact from Aaron Deakins toward her? Because that is a concern that I actually have as well.
I don't off the top of my head, but we will be having a family team meeting anyways to discuss if and when a decision is made today. But I will be going to the home on a weekly basis, making myself available to her whenever needed. And we have an on-call number as well that's any worker is able to like get to her if she needs that, or if she feels uncomfortable or unsafe. And we can definitely brainstorm more with like her service providers, like Camp and Cobb, and see what they offer, as well as her individual therapists.
Okay, thank you.
One last question. If grandma's gonna be babysitting at some point, is she doing some of these trainings or understanding the needs of the child too?
I don't know if she's doing any trainings or anything like that. We don't have any, I've never asked her to do anything like that.
Thank you, nothing further.
Is there an in-home program that could be implemented to support Stormy's return, like FRP, or is the Orchards program an in-home program that could be implemented to support the reunification?
Yes, I did inquire to Orchards, and they have an opening on August 19th.
Okay.
And she does currently have a family assistance program. And just to safeguard, I will be doing weekly home visits.
Questions based on my questions?
I may have misunderstood the reference to Orchard, but is it true that she's already receiving in-home therapy with Highfields?
Stormy is, yes.
So would that just continue in the placement if
Yes,
it
it
was
would.
granted to? So she would have that continued inpatient or in-home therapy with Ms. Deakins?
Yes, and
Okay.
I did inquire about FRP, and they have an opening on the 19th.
Okay, and so that would be in addition to that.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
One last thing, may I? Tranquil parenting, it was an idea that I discussed with you. Am I in the right case? Yes? No? Okay, I'll save it for another day anyway. I discussed it in a case where it can't be funded by the agency. Is that part of our discussion? Thank you so much. I get them mixed up sometimes. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Now you return your seat. The next witness, Ms. Thomas.
Your Honor, I don't have any further witnesses for Ms. Deakins' component, but before we move on, I would just like to confirm with the court and the other attorneys what exactly they have in their possession, so we know what exactly is in the record.
The only thing I have is the July court report and the trauma assessments, and a not great copy of an update as it relates to Mr. Deakins. Just got the social file, so let me check to see. Yeah, the last report I have in here was that report submitted April 16th, 2024. Oh, I know that was the one. I don't think that's the May report that she was discussing.
May 8th and July 8th and July 31st are when she sent these reports out, because I've got a Renee Moore addendum, Chanel's letter from court report. I've got DVAP Catholic Charities report.
Are you looking at the email?
No,
I am, Your Honor. I'm looking at the email. I received a court report on July 8th that it had all of the attachments to the progress of my client, and they were positive, so I kind of want the court to have that.
Does that email have the juvenile court clerk's address included?
I will
in
tell you.
it's delivered to?
It has Lehigh, Illinois County Juvenile Court, yes.
Thank you. All right, well, that helps me determine who to ask for.
It was received at 8:31 p.m. on July 8th.
Thank you. All right, we can take that up with the clerk's office and try to get a hold of a copy.
I have read through all these extra things and they are accurately summarized, but there are extra things in there that you might notice.
Well, it says July 8th was the date it was submitted, but the date of the report itself that I'm looking at indicates that it was signed on July 8th. So it was submitted July 31st, but it says it was signed July 8th.
Ms. Madrid updated the case service plan to just a small extent by adding that additional attachment. I'm assuming she probably covered just anything that occurred between July 8th and the 31st. I received the 31st report immediately preceding the date of that, I believe. All
right, so that's what it looks like at this moment, Ms. House.
I can read off the attachments, Ms. Thomas, that if you still need to know what was received on that July 8th report.
Or even forward it to all of us just to make sure. In
Well,
addition.
I'm more concerned about the court having it in their record, just in the event of an appeal. I just want to make sure that our record is accurate. I have no doubt that each of the attorneys and parties received 2 packets. One when we were supposed to have a hearing on, I believe it was July 15th, and then again for today's hearing. But I agree with Ms. Heiss that there are attachments that are more thorough in the July 9th packet of information. So we have Ms. Deakins psychological, we have like the individual letters from Ms. Moore, Catholic Charities, and I'm missing one. Sorry. Ms. Moore, Catholic Charities, Ms. Moore again, but for a different individual as part of the case. So I don't know what the court would like me to do about that, but I just want to make sure the court has it. I'm confident that our parties have it. And I agree with Ms. Borders that it was an update for anything that happened between last submission to this one. And partly my failure to look at my file entirely and make sure that both dates reports were included for today's hearing.
I have forwarded it to Mr. Powell.
Thank you. So I suppose final question is, was the July 8th packet more than 20 pages? Because if it's more than 20 pages, then it's required to be dropped off. Okay, that might also explain why it hasn't made its way into the. All right, so we'll ask Mr. Powell then to print that for us this time to make sure that we have it. Obviously, that's important, but please keep that in mind. Okay, we'll track it down.
Thank you, Judge.
We take a recess briefly in order to make sure that happens, unless there's any other testimony that needs to take place as it relates to Ms. Deakins. Ms. Borders? Is nice?
No.
Very good. Did you want to have any commentary, closing comments?
I do.
Yes, Jenner. As it relates to, I think the main issue here is Stormy and where she's going to go. We recognize that mom is making significant progress and continuing to benefit from her services, which is always such a really nice thing for us to be able to come to court and recognize for parents. I know that it seems contradictory to ask the court to consider Stormy to be placed with mother at this time, but I think that Ms. Heiss and Ms. Madrid summarized that request very well and the reasoning behind it. I believe that having an in-home service there as a support system for Ms. Deakins and Stormy, that dyad would be really beneficial. It sounds like there's going to be an increase in parenting time for the 2 other children. And I also know that there's, the ancillary divorce proceedings, and with that will come child custody. And so I think that allowing for this transition period to be treated as such, it can help the family prepare for that when CPS and the agency are out of their lives. So with that, we are just requesting that Stormy be permitted to be returned to mom's care and custody with the supervision or under the supervision of the department and agency at this time. If the court feels necessary to add in the FTM be conducted within the next 14 days. We are very agreeable to that. And then finally, we are asking the court to make a ruling as to this particular case for these parents who should receive what when it comes to court reports. We understand the concern of parents receiving this confidential information, such as like the full psychological reports and progress and all of that. So we just ask the court to make a ruling on that point for clear instructions for the department and agency moving forward in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I would like to second the request for the protective order. I understand that many times the court is in a situation, the agency is dealing with two parents who are together. But my client has been a victim of domestic violence on the part of Mr. Deakins for years. They are currently in the active pursuit of a divorce. Mr. Deakins contacted my client's mother and read a portion of her psychological report off to her as some type of ploy for custody in the future. By him having possession of that psychological evaluation, I do believe that my client is at a disadvantage and would ask that there be a protective order on that. He's just like everything else he's done to her, he's using it as a form of abuse. And I'm asking that the court protect my client from any further confidential mental health records, medical records from being released to Mr. Deakins, absent a specific request of the court to release those. In addition to that, I have to say, I'm really proud to represent Ms. Deakins. I told her she had admitted and pled no contest to this entire petition prior to retaining me to represent her. I explained to her the best way to get past this and get this over is to get through it and to comply to the extent you are capable and go further than that. And I check in with her regularly, we talk regularly, and she is actually doing more than she is even asked or required to do by the Department of Human Services. She has done it also really quickly. And I think the more distance that she has from Mr. Deakins, contrary to the car in the driveway situation and him instigating contact again, I think everyone is doing their best trying to approach Chanel with the understanding that she is also a victim. Her children are certainly victims, and she did have a responsibility to protect them from being a witness to domestic violence upon her. But she is also now, I've noticed, breaking free from that victim mentality and staying and excusing. She has the sole goal in her day from the moment she wakes up to the moment she goes to bed. I assure this court that she is doing what she can do to get back her children back. And it is an interesting request to the court to return the child that has really been the greatest barrier to reunification to her, and not allow the other two children to be returned to her as well. I respect that these two other children need a break, but there is not the same concerns noted in anything contained within the court record as far as Ms. Deakins' bond or abilities as it pertains to her relationship with Lily and Connor, whereas Stormy has been very vocal, and also Ms. Moore definitely articulates that she kind of runs my client rather than the other way around. I think that I do understand the need for not setting my client up for failure, but she has verbalized to me that she's ready and very much eager to have her children all returned to her. She's got a job and a house and going to all of these counseling sessions, and parenting classes are over already. She's done so much. If she can do all of this, I do believe that she can also parent her children without the supervision or without supervision. But I do respect the court or the department's request to not overwhelm her. And if the court does respect that request as well and order that, I am asking that there be an earlier review period set up so that there could be a potential for reunification with the other two children if things are going well at home between Chanel and Stormy. I do know that, you know, she has had her children removed from her since January of 2024, and she was also a victim of the same circumstances that led to that removal. So I just could not be more proud of her progress in her case service plan. Of course, we're always looking to see if Aaron's and her are having contact, but you know, she's doing her best to separate herself from somebody that has been abusive to her since she was 17 years old is when she left the home and married Mr. Deakins. She is breaking free herself, and I'm proud of her for that. and she deserves some recognition from the department for that. I think that they have done that by their testimonies today, and I appreciate them for that. With that being said, I guess there's just so much I have to say about Ms. Deakins that I'm going to withhold any further comment for now and just make sure that what I have asked for is clear, because I do believe she deserves to have her children returned to her. Ms.
Ms. Borders must have access to her own client to know the reservations that we have and the things that have happened. You know, the Samaritas CTAC report on Stormy indicates some diagnoses that would be best supported in an environment, you know, without access to substances, for example, and those kinds of things. It's a risk, but one that I'm recommending, and the agency's recommending as well. Stormy, when you see her in person, she has so many strengths that are hard to describe. And we do believe this is the right move to make, but it isn't without risk. So I don't think we need an early review, but it doesn't ever hurt. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Heiss, are you specifically recommending that Stormy be returned immediately or returned after a family team meeting is conducted?
The discretion to return her after a family team meeting. I think there should be some weekends and that kind of thing, depending on school schedules and her schedule with dad and those kinds of things. And we just need those rules in place. We need a commitment to the counseling and the counseling together, and we need to talk through some things. So after a family team meeting, Your Honor.
All right. So I need to make sure that we are going to have all of the documents for this file. And I also think that Ms. Borders, you and Ms. Thomas and Ms. Heiss should probably have a chat with Mr. Brooks on behalf of Mr. Deakins about your request to essentially sequester attachments between the two parents. He should be heard on that request before I make that ruling. So we're going to take a brief recess to allow you to do that, to allow me to look for those documents to make sure that our file is complete. Thank you, Your Honor. And we weren't able to finish it all in the time allotted. Our guardian ad litem had some obligations as well. And so we reconvened. Previously, the review for mother and father were separated, and we've made our way, I think, probably through the majority of the review as it relates to Ms. Chanel Deakins, who is rejoining us by Zoom. As it relates to Mr. Aaron Deakins, those facts need to be explored on record. So I'm looking forward to any other comments as it relates to Ms. Chanel Deakins' case, as well as the updates on Mr. Deakins' case, and then I'll make the ruling as necessary for purposes of today's review, which is also a permanency planning hearing. May I have the names of our participants, please?
Lee Heiss, lawyer, guardian ad litem.
Ms. Naja Thomas, counsel for the department. Ms. Madrid.
Francesca Madrid, foster care worker from Fostering Solutions.
Michael Brooks, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Age before beauty.
Okay, Michael Brooks, I represent the father, Aaron Deakins. Mr. Deakins.
Aaron Deakins, father.
Angie Borders on behalf of Chanel Deakins' mother, who is appearing via Zoom. Chanel.
Chanel Deakins.
All right, thank you. Well, let's go back to you, Ms. Heiss. Any reports or updates from you that you might like to share? That we have Mr. Deakins as well.
Yes, we asked Mr. Deakins to leave the room for Ms. Deakins' hearing. So to reiterate, I visited with the children in person a few times during visits with their mother. And Stormy has asked to be placed with her mother. My perception is that it's best for the other two children to preserve their placement, to have Stormy, the placement is not negotiable, that Stormy is disruptive and not following instructions, and it's a danger. It's a danger to her. So in order to preserve the placement for the oldest and youngest, to have Stormy out of the house, I think would have a very good effect for the kids. I'm gonna get back to my notes instead of pulling on my memory. We are saying that mother has completed services and benefited from services to the extent that we don't expect more progress. But at this point, there isn't another foster home available for Stormy, and we don't want to go to less home-like environments. So that mother has done a lot of services and benefited from services to the extent that we think it's time to give this a try. Mother has the resource of her mother there in the home, and Stormy is so unhappy that we think that this would calm down some of the mental health problems if they're able to be controlled by Stormy. At least we can tell. It is not without issues, I will grant. So I would like to observe some visits with the kids and Mr. Deakins, specifically because the CTAC the child trauma assessments indicate that the children's bonds with the dad are secured. So it sounds to me on a piece of paper that that's a good relationship for the kids to explore, expand. Anyway, but I haven't done that yet, and I will. I believe in the court report, it indicates dad's hoping for independent housing before we really all jump in and support more, but I haven't gotten that information from dad, only in the court report. So making sure that there isn't unwanted contact between mom and dad. The kids need to trust that mom and dad are following services. It's really disruptive, Stormy, I guess, especially trust when that's violated. And I do not oppose the request for protective order in the court reports. I think this is an exception to the rule where the parents are, we can summarize for each parent how the other person's mental health is going, because it is significant and important that they understand the mental health of the other person parenting their children, but they don't need to know specifics, and it doesn't, if the HIPAA rights could be respected in this family. I think that finishes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony today as it relates to anything new or updates on Ms. Deakins, or of course, Mr. Deakins, Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Honor. I would just like, I guess, some guidance. Would we like to have Mr. Deakins' full review with Ms. Deakins present, or is that fine with the court at this time?
It's come to my attention through the review that we had the other day with Ms. Deakins that both of these parties have, specifically Ms. Deakins has asked for a modification of bond conditions so that the two can talk about parenting time. And of course, we need to know what their relationship looks like and how that's progressing. I know there's a request for a divorce, but also we have continued concern about contact, as well as that request to modify the bond conditions. So I'm not, frankly, if they are not concerned about refraining from that type of contact, I don't think it's necessary for the court to take time and resources from its docket, as well as the attorneys that are involved in this case, to conduct these reviews separately. So for those reasons, the short answer to your question is yes, please go ahead and proceed with any proofs you may have as it relates to either parent at this time.
Thank you, Honor. I appreciate that. Ms. Madrid, I'm sorry, can Ms. Madrid please be sworn in? Thank you. Ms. Madrid, just as it relates to Ms. Deakins, were there any updates since our last review hearing that you would like to put on the record at this time?
As it relates to Ms. Deakins, no.
Okay. And as far as Mr. Deakins, the court report indicates, well, let me ask first, are there any updates or modifications to his portion for the documents that were provided to the court as it relates to Mr. Deakins that need to be updated or modified?
No.
Okay. And as it relates to Mr. Deakins, how would you generally describe his level of compliance with and benefit from his case service plan?
I would say he is compliant with his case service plan. He is engaged in individual counseling through Catholic Charities. He is engaged in DBAP with Mr. John Bailey. He also is employed through Express Staffing at Antivia, and he has been attending some of the children's psychotropic medication reviews this reporting period, and he also did participate in the psychological in June. I just still don't have those results back yet.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And it seems like based on your court report, he's also attending every parenting time and all of that is going well.
Yes.
Okay, and for your recommendations, are you asking the court to consider the transition to unsupervised parenting time for him during this review period as well?
We would be moving to expanding visits as well as including some unsupervised time.
Wonderful. And I know that one of the things that Ms. Heiss brought up and that is also in the court report is the housing situation. Are there any updates to that particular component of his case service plan?
Ms. Madrid, before you respond, if you could get a little closer to your microphone, we can hear Ms. Thomas very well, but yours is a little more muffled.
Okay. I was just going to say that the only update I have is that Mr. Deakins did tell me he was looking for his own independent housing. And he would have to give any more recent update on if he has secured his own housing yet.
Okay, and so you haven't been able to observe where he's currently residing?
No, I have not conducted a home visit yet.
Okay. And as it relates to Stormy, there's this really great bond with Mr. Deakins and he's doing everything that's being asked of him. Is the housing the only issue that has prevented the agency from considering him for placement for Stormy at this time?
We would like to see some more consistent compliance and benefiting from services. I know there was a couple no-shows with Catholic Charities, and I know this is his second time being referred to DVAP. But other than that, I will be assessing his home in the next reporting period.
Okay, thank you. And are there any other updates that you would like to provide for the record, either that are not in the court report or you would like to highlight from the court report?
Not at this time.
Okay. And I know that there's been some discussions about the parents having contact. I guess, can you just give us a little bit of an update on what that has meant for the children and I guess Mr. Deakins' response to all of that?
Okay, ladies, I'm just gonna ask you to slow down a little bit because it's, you know, our sound system in the courtroom is not as good as you can hear on Zoom. So if you could slow down and speak clearly, that would be great.
Would you like me to re-ask the question, Your Honor?
I think that could be good. We did have your signal break up just a little bit while you were speaking.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I am currently in the car, so that might be an issue for a little bit. Ms. Madrid, as it relates to the contact between Mr. and Mrs. Deakins, can you provide the court with an update on how that has impacted the children and the parents' responses to addressing that concern?
Yes, so as of right now, I have not had any concrete concern or incident other than the lawnmowing incident, which we spoke already about at the last review. Both parents seem to be honest about what happened as far as like communication, the request with grandma and things like that. Both parents seem to be working on addressing those concerns. I have spoke to Mr. Deakins and he has asked me and stated that he would like to continue a relationship with Ms. Deakins.
Okay, slow down, Ms. Madrid, please slow down.
Sorry. He has stated and continued to state that he would like to continue a relationship with Ms. Deakins. However, Ms. Deakins has continued to state that she does not want a relationship with Mr. Deakins, and she has continued to be compliant with her case service.
Thank you. With that, Your Honor, I have no further questions for Ms. Madrid and would move to admit the court reports as discussed at the hearing on Wednesday, which would include the report and its documents that were provided early July and then again for the most recent hearing.
Okay, so that's 2 court reports, trauma assessments for all 3 children. I have to tell you, this Catholic Charities letter about Mr. Deakins is incomplete. I can't even tell what the date is on it, so that's not ideal. I'd like another copy of that, and I'll address some of my other concerns about the reports from the counselors in a moment. There's also an email from July 8th from Ms. Brene Moore to Ms. Madrid regarding Stormy. There's another letter from Catholic Charities in much better shape, frankly, from Ms. Karen Gray from July regarding Aaron Deakins. There's a copy of the psychological evaluation of Ms. Chanel Deakins and a copy of a letter from Catherine Cobb regarding Chanel Deakins. So if there's anything else, you're gonna have to let me know, but that's what I have in front of me.
Yeah, and I believe that is the sum of what I have as well.
All right, counselors, objections or concerns about what you may have?
No.
No objection. Thank you. All right, they are received then in their entirety. And cross-examination, let's start with Ms. Borders. Any cross-examination?
I do not have any cross-examination.
Mr. Brooks?
Ms. Madrid, did I hear you correctly say that my client has completed the case service plan?
He is compliant.
Compliant, not completed. All right. And I also, I believe, heard you say that he is actively and appropriately engaged in that case service plan.
Yes, yes.
The next question I have is, aside from housing, does he present any threat of harm to his 3 children at this time?
We would like to see him continue engaging consistently and benefiting from his individual counseling and DBAP. He is still stating that he would like a relationship with Ms. Deakins.
Well, the way you phrased it, it almost sounds like Ms. Deakins is the threat. Am I misinterpreting you?
I am trying to say that he is and continuously stating that he would like to continue to have a relationship with Ms. Deakins. Although he is compliant with his case service plan, he would need to participate consistently and benefit from those services.
Just because I want a relationship.
As long as he continues to have that desire to have a continuing relationship with Mrs. Deakins, is that going to be a hurdle to reunification with his 3 children?
I believe that the best thing would be for him to continue to work towards those feelings and addressing the reasons that he wants to continue a relationship with Ms. Deakins, although it brought his children into foster care.
Let me say more directly, yes or no? Is she an impediment to the safety of these kids, if that's what he wants to do, is have a relationship with
Yes.
her? Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Heiss?
Ms. Madrid, could it be that the DAV program provider is telling us this is the third time Dad has gone through domestic violence training? I think today you said second time. It's my understanding it's his third time.
Yes, that was my mistake.
Thank you. And then also another reason that you're not recommending that Stormy be placed with Dad is that she hasn't requested that. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect, Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you for, well, any recross, Ms. Borders, Mr. Brooks?
No,
Yes, just to clarify one of Mr. Brooks' questions, Ms. Madrid, Mr. Brooks asked you a question and you did answer it, but the answer was not really to his question. So I want to make sure I have an understanding. He interpreted your response to indicate that Miss Deakins, Chanel, is a threat to the children, rather than is that what you said?
No.
Thank you. And should I clarify that as of right now, do you believe Miss Deakins is a threat to her children?
No.
Thank you.
Did you want to recross?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your testimony. Any other witnesses, Ms. Thomas?
Given my signal issue, I'm not going to call anyone else at this time.
Okay. Ms. Borders, anybody else you want us to hear from?
No, thank you. I handled everything Wednesday.
Mr. Brooks?
Aaron Deakins.
Okay. Mr. Deakins coming up to a witness stand. Ready? Well.
Mr. Deakins, first of all, with respect to the domestic violence charges against you, where are they at today?
I've accepted accountability of them, and
Yeah, speak up.
I've accepted the accountability of them, and I'm in classes to handle a better, appropriate judgment of what I'm doing.
Well, have you pled guilty,
Yes.
not guilty?
I pled guilty, and I'm on probation for 9 months.
All right, that's what I wanted to know. And there are classes that you have been ordered to take under the probation program?
No, there are classes that I was taking from my request of Francesca, and my probation is going to continue it.
Yeah, and probation is aware of the classes that you're taking,
Yes,
and they approve of them from, is it your impression they approve of them?
yes.
Right. How often do you get to see your kids?
I get 2 hours on Monday and then 2 hours on Wednesday every week.
And are you maintaining that schedule by going?
Yes,
Now, they are recommending that, is she your oldest child, Stormy?
my middle child.
Your middle child. They're recommending that child go back and live with her mother. You understand that?
I do.
Do you agree with that decision?
I agree that reunification, even if it's with their mother, is the best, but I would rather see all three of them go because I don't believe the other two are going to handle it more appropriately.
Do you have a second choice, a tier 2 choice, so to speak?
I would rather see the other two go home before the one that she has no bond with,
Who's she?
Chanel.
She has no bond with whom?
Stormy.
How old is Stormy?
Stormy's 13.
Why do you say she has no bond?
Oh, that's what was stated in court
By whom?
by Francesca.
Is the bond broken from both perspectives, mom and child,
I
or
do.
just in one direction?
I don't know that.
Well, what's your opinion?
I feel that Stormy likes to get what she wants, and with that, her mom is easily able to give that to her. So, I mean, I think that Stormy doesn't have a bond with her mom because it's that time of week. There's times that Stormy doesn't have a bond with me because of her feelings. And it happens to be that time that she's against her mom on things, and that's what everybody sees. But my honest opinion is I believe that Chanel does have a bond with Stormy, as she has a bond with the rest of the kids. And the acting out is just because Stormy's not getting what she wants at the point in time.
What kind of relationship do the other 2 kids have with their mom?
Ever since I could remember, it's been an amazing relationship with their mom.
I know this is going to sound harsh, but I'm going to ask it. So Stormy is the outlier of the 3 kids? She's the one who doesn't fit?
She's very emotional to things, and when it doesn't go her way, she has a problem with that direction.
And those personality characteristics are not evident in your other 2 kids?
No. Connor sometimes has fits when he doesn't get what he wants, but they don't go to the extent where he changes his moods completely. He's still a loving and caring boy, so.
So is there anything that you want the court to know about you, the relationship? Oh, housing. Where are you at with housing?
I've been talking to my mother further about moving in with her, so I have appropriate placement for the kids when they come and see me.
Where does she live?
That was the problem. She lives in Jackson.
Who says it's a problem?
I just feel like the distance between that and job placements and therapy, but my therapist has agreed to find a way to work with me.
Where do you work?
Right now, I was just recently laid off from my job.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like this court to know?
I just feel that it would be better to see all three kids go home.
Do you know what your wife's opinion about that is?
I do not.
Nothing further.
Cross-examination, Ms. Thomas?
Mr. Deakins, had you reported to Ms. Madrid that you were already staying with your mother?
No, I had reported that I was staying with my aunt and that my permanent mailing address is with my grandfather. And I was talking with my mother.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And had you reported to Ms. Madrid about the layoff from your employer?
No.
Okay. Is that a permanent layoff or is it just temporary and you intend to go back soon?
I believe it's a permanent.
Okay. Do you need any support in finding new employment?
I've been looking for new employment as it is.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Borders?
Sorry, I do not have any questions for Mr. Deakins. Thank you.
Ms. Heiss?
Stormy's having this therapy with her mom. Do you want any resources like that with any of the kids?
I mean, if it gives me more time with my children, I would take it.
But you'd rather have more time outside of account? I mean, in addition to that, you want more time with your kids?
Yes.
All right, so do you have this court report that we all got for today?
I do.
And in there's a trauma assessment. Did you see that?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Okay, so when you have Stormy and the other kids with you, there are some recommendations in those trauma assessments for how to handle the children. Are you familiar with those recommendations?
I don't recall them right now.
Yeah, so they're kind of worded kind of like a doctor would say it, but if you need any help with those recommendations, because we're watching for you to implement those recommendations in your parenting.
Right.
Okay, so if you need any help reading through or giving examples of what one of the recommendations would be, I hope you'll ask Francesca and the team can help you with that. We have a family team meeting and we could give examples of what those recommendations mean, break them down a little bit. Just a minute here, I do have. So when you say you think it's best for all three kids to be reunited, not just Stormy, is there anything wrong with placement in your mind? Do you know anything that we should know?
I don't see a problem with placement with their mother because she has the housing, she has a job, I mean, I've never been against that.
The placement where they are with Crystal and I forget his name.
From what Lily told me in my last visit is that Crystal wanted them all placed back home anyways.
And then Crystal agreed to keep two if Stormy can find better resources, a better placement. Did you know that progress had been made?
I did hear about that, yes.
Okay, but you still, so is there anything wrong with placement? In addition, your first priority is all three go home with mom because mom's ready, is what you're saying, it sounds like.
I believe that Chanel is in the proper placement to have all three kids. I'm not professional to be able to say that, but I mean, or bond with the other two kids, she never had a problem with them, just from growing with the kids and her. I know that her, parenting with the other kids has never been an issue.
Right, but do you see any behavior of Stormy's that is difficult on the other two?
She's gotten rougher on bullying. I have noticed that, yes.
So if the old Lily and Connor want to stay at Crystal's just to start school, is that a factor? How would you factor that into what you would like for them? Still want them all to go to mom?
I would still rather see them home, but if they wanted to stay, then I'm not gonna argue with the kids. I'd rather see them home.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Can you redirect?
Who's Crystal?
My sister-in-law.
That's all.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seat.
No other witnesses.
Ms. Heiss.
No witnesses today. Thank you.
Very well. Comments in closing, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe that I made a closing at the last hearing as well. And I just want to reincorporate that. And then for Mr. Deakins' sake, I would just like to say the agency's position is for Stormy to be returned to mother, but still under the jurisdiction of this court, to see if that can help her mental health stabilize and also give the other two children an opportunity to continue to experience some healing and work in their own therapeutic processing. At this time, I think that the relationship between the parents and how that looks moving forward, whether they're in a parallel parenting situation or co-parenting situation, is really the main issue that needs to continue to be monitored and addressed moving forward, as the domestic violence in this family is really concerning and what caused the case to primarily open. So with that, we are asking the court to maintain status quo, with the exception of parenting time to be expanded throughout this review period, and maintain the goal for reunification. Thank you.
Ms. Borders?
I did make some comments last weekend or on Wednesday, but I just wanted to address just a couple matters. One, that as to any request to have the bond conditions modified, that's already been addressed, I believe, but DHS is placed into their provisions that the parties are not to have contact. I see no reason why the parties should need to have any contact regarding parenting time when parenting time is determined by DHS. So I honestly, in protecting my clients' success and working through this case service plan, actually want that no contact to remain in place. And so does my client. Now, as for the return of the children, I think certainly my client has done exceptionally well within her case service plan. And we talked about that at length on Wednesday, but I believe it warrants a return of all three children. However, in discussions with my client, she understands that the alternatives for Stormy's placement would be really detrimental to Stormy's well-being. So it leaves the determination. I believe DHS, with all due respect, is doing their best to make sure that Stormy and Chanel's reunification process is not being set up for failure. However, it is very obvious that Stormy has been the one who has struggled the most with Chanel. And now the recommendation is to place Stormy with Chanel, when Chanel certainly wants all three of her children returned back to her. So I'm asking the court to consider kind of a middle ground on the review hearing as it pertains to reunification regarding the other two children. I am obviously supportive of returning Stormy to Chanel's care, but do not want to wait for 90 days to have reunification with the other two children, so long as that reunification is successful between Stormy and Chanel. There's no dispute based on any testimony contained in the record or any of the exhibits, that Chanel's appropriate and the other two children are actually bonded and also, in my opinion, ready to go home to Chanel. And the only reason why they're not doing that right now is because the children do not want to be placed with Stormy. But Chanel is their parent, and she has done everything she had to do and continues to do so in order to get reunification. So I am asking that we set a review period for the purposes of reunification of the other two children sooner than normal. Because I think that it's already appropriate. And I think that my client is being really reasonable about understanding why they are only sending Stormy home at this time because of Stormy's well-being and what's in Stormy's best interest. If it were not to be Chanel where she was going to, without saying more, it would be detrimental to Stormy to be placed anywhere else. So she doesn't want to do that to Stormy and understands the reasoning of DHS, but does want to move towards reunification with the other two kids as soon as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks?
Well, Your Honor, we're talking about two different levels of issues here. Let's start with the one that I can address more directly, and that is my client's parenting time, supervised or otherwise. I haven't heard anybody say that my client's a threat to his kids if he's around them. And yet I'm sitting here looking at this and his parenting time is somewhat limited. Why? Because of domestic violence, number one, but nobody has said he isn't doing a pretty good job with that. Two, housing. And that I concede is a legitimate issue. Mr. Deakins has got to do something to have an appropriate, clean, safe environment, stable environment where his kids can go. But once they're there, he doesn't appear, based on the evidence I've seen, to be any kind of a threat at all to his kids. And I think he should be given some latitude to get that rolling so that he can see his kids in a manner that he thinks is more appropriate until they can be reunified with their mother, who he also supports. The mother and the father are in agreement to the extent that they think the best interests of their children are that all three of them be placed together. The two of them are in complete agreement, and the best place for that to be is with their mom. That's a surprising amount of consensus in one of these cases. I think some weight should be given to the opinion, the joint opinion of both the mom and the dad, particularly since they're not living together. And I support this court's decision to lift any kind of a ban that keeps them from speaking. The only issue I would take with it is when you've got three kids, you got things that happen. And I think they do need to talk to each other about those things. Where I think Mrs. Deakins is concerned about issues is crossing the line into something other than talking about the kids. And I agree with her. If that's a concern to her, I think I support her concern. But just about the kids, which can be done if no other way, we can get on that computer thing that records everything they say and makes it available to the courts to keep the conversation between the lines. And I think that's a good way to get it done. But I don't know what the domestic violence history really is in this case, but it appears to be being addressed in a way that everybody approves of. And I think that says a lot. I think his parenting time should be increased. It should be unsupervised. And he would like to see his three kids along with his wife to his wife, and that they would all be better off because of it. I don't know anything at all, to be frank, about what issues Stormy does or doesn't have. And yes, I did hear that the other two kids don't want to be around her. None of us are perfect, I guess. But I would like to see my client, number one, get great deal more visitation, more liberal visitation. Number two, I'd like the three kids to be in the home with their mother until we can get through this.
Ms. Heiss?
Yes, thank you. I just want to take a minute for the record to say that Stormy is not the problem or the outlier. She is a child who has experienced a significant amount of trauma, including physical abuse, emotional abuse, exposure to domestic violence, parental substance abuse, impaired parenting possibly due to mental illness, and lengthy or multiple separations from the parent and also placement outside the home. So she's experienced this in her history, and now we're seeing the behavior. That's why we want good parenting in addition to taking care of the child's needs at the time. You don't want these things to come out later where she missed some caregiving and some things that she needed, so that now so the burden is on the parents to support the child. I don't think it's true that the other two children don't want to be around Stormy at all. I think that they would like a break of some sort, and they want to stay in this placement that they've been in for about 6 months now. It's a family member, and they feel loved and feel centered. They want to go home too, but they don't disagree that Stormy's needs are higher. You know, she pinches them and kicks them and uses swear words, and she teases Connor. She said he had a spider on his back the other day and he about flipped out, but the other sister, you know, was helping him get his shirt off and address it. But it really, this caseworker has been to the hospital with Stormy and up late nights and saw the difference the mom made when she came to the hospital. And I think we should rely on that to know that the caseworker is representing that going home for Stormy is a good idea. It is absolutely not a punishment that the other two children aren't coming home. It is meant for the best success of the family. I'm hearing that mom is trying her hardest. I don't think these people had consensus that we needed jurisdiction in the beginning, but now mom is trying to do what the counselors are advising and be in out of an unhealthy relationship. And maybe dad doesn't feel that way, but we have to give mom some distance to participate in the case service plan, which she's doing and doing a really good job. She welcomes me into her home and the kids are happy to be there. I think they'd all like to be there soon. So I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. The court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review hearing. There are quite a few things put to the court to determine or decide today, in addition to the permanency planning goal question. The permanency planning goal in this case of reunification is and continues to be appropriate. And I think the questions that have to be answered today are reflective of that. Both parents are engaged in services and appear to be making progress. I need some more information about that as we move forward to help further advise the court as well as the service providers as to how much progress is being made and the benefit from services. And I think the lack of information on those points is reflected in Ms. Heiss's concerns. We did discuss it. It was discussed, I should say, by the parties, and some information on some of those gaps was offered at the last time we came together this week previously. So the court's order is going to require at the next report period from each of the counselors for the parents, and it sounds like there's two for each parent, verification of whether or not he or she has received the most recent court report. And Ms. Francesca Madrid, some of this is for you too. I'm going to ask you to verify that the counselors have all received a copy of the court report so that they are aware of any concerns that arise from foster care monitoring and case management, progress that's being made by each parent, and any psychological evaluations should be supplied to the counselor for each person, as well as any other mental health evaluations or progress, and even as specifically as from the other counselor that might be meeting with the parent, so that there's accountability for each parent with service providers, and so that they can be informed when I start asking them questions or when our other attorneys and service providers start asking questions. So circulation of documents is very important in the next report period to those service providers. And that's because the risk of harm associated with returning the children to the primary care of either parent right now continue to be the dynamics of domestic violence in the home. We heard Ms. Heiss articulate very clearly, consistently, and carefully what Stormy's diagnoses are that were highlighted in her trauma assessments. And her experiences are really very demonstrative of the risks of harm that are associated with simply just returning the children to the parents at this time. This is a 2014 case. This is not the first time this family has been subject to court proceedings. And clearly there was a lot that happened between 2014 and this second petition, which is reflected again very broadly in the current diagnoses of the middle child. So that's the goal, is to reduce those dynamics in the home and to work on the parents' skills in navigating their own personal relationships and the relationships between parent and child. I agree with Ms. Heiss, our guardian ad litem, who is in satisfaction of her obligations, by the way, thank you. That returning Stormy first to the care of mother is appropriate and necessary. There will be some cautions and stipulations. For example, I'll expect Ms. Madrid to do as she's already told us she wants to, which is to facilitate a family team meeting to discuss some safety planning. I'm going to add to that an accountability contract, which was recommended in her psychological evaluations prior to returning Stormy to her care, to utilize extended and overnight visitations to facilitate the transition of the return of this child into her household, and ask Ms. Madrid to watch carefully to ensure the parent and child have both demonstrated progress in the dynamics of their relationship that present a risk. Those concerns were articulated by Ms. Moore, by Ms. Heiss, and in the trauma assessment. One example is the parentification of this particular child. So I think with those shorter visits, and we'll see how that goes. Ms. Madrid's going to be the one who has to try to spearhead that. Just keep in mind, and ask Stormy and Chanel to keep in mind, that those dynamics between parent and child are what will help all of us understand whether or not some of the risks of harm have been alleviated. Ms. Chanel Deakins has been working hard in therapy and in making changes in her life and her lifestyle to support wanting to remain on her own and to change those dynamics. And so we're going to put them to test. And that is also in light of the fact that this child is in need of a change. The placement where she's at is telling us, is reflecting back to us that there's too much stress there to allow her to stay there. And certainly asking Ms. Chanel Deakins to demonstrate her gained skills is a much better alternative than finding another family for Stormy Deakins to have to try to adjust to. That is a known trauma. So I appreciate the department working with Chanel Deakins to try to work that child back into her care rather than subjecting her to another move, which may require looking at an outside, a person completely outside the family. So for those reasons, I am going to authorize the return of the middle child to the home of Chanel Deakins for now. I will maintain the other two in the relative placement, and that is because I want to see the demonstration that Ms. Deakins is saying she can do, which is to be able to help that middle child manage her behaviors and manage continued boundaries between her and her husband, as well as healthy boundaries between herself and this child. So if those dynamics can be built soundly, then there is certainly better anticipated success with return of all three children onto her care in the future, which is and should be the goal here. So, but there are the stipulations around that. I like Mr. Brooks's idea of using an application to monitor the communications between these two parents, especially in light of the changes to the bond conditions that we heard about, which allow them to communicate about parenting time issues. I'll ask Ms. Madrid to see if there's any funding out there to help them pay for this, but there is an application called Our Family Wizard that would allow both parents to utilize an application on their phone to communicate, and for that communication to be visible to Ms. Madrid and to any of the attorneys that might want or need to see that. Again, to look at the dynamics between these parents to see whether or not they're co-parenting in a way that reflects progress in their case services plans. If we see that those dynamics in domestic violence, power and control are easy to see, even in written communications and emails and text messages. So I think that's a great idea and a good way to allow the parents to demonstrate whether or not there's any progress being made on these services. I didn't miss that this is Mr. Deakins' third attempt to go through some of these classes and education programs. We'll see what happens with the family moving forward. Ms. Deakins wants her divorce. She wants to maintain her separation and develop her boundaries. And I respect that, and I hope that is successful for the family. Mr. Deakins has to accept that and to learn how to co-parent separately from her. And the application will hopefully help all of us understand whether or not there's progress being made in those areas. I think, again, returning one of the children rather than all three alleviate some of the stress associated with demonstrating those changes and avoid some of the potential increased stressors that the return of all children to the care of their mother at this time would certainly present, especially around parenting, co-parenting between the two. So again, I think that also supports just the return of the singular child rather than all three. That's of course also supported by our LGAL and our case worker at this time. So the court will authorize that change. All right. I think I've covered the main things that will be in an attachment to today's dispositional order. In addition to, of course, the case services plan and the advice of rights. I have covered the risk of harm associated with returning all three children to the care of either parent at this time. The relative placement is the safest and least restrictive under the conditions that the court's articulated today. I do find that reasonable efforts towards reunification are being made and spearheaded by Ms. Madrid quite effectively. Thank you for your dedication and response to the middle child as she makes her way through some of the as well. In many ways, seeing these behaviors is indicative that this child is beginning to express some of the things that need to be expressed in order for her to move forward in her therapeutic progress. So hopefully that's what's happening, and I'll look forward to service updates for the children at the next review period too, to make sure that they have the support that they need as they make their way through their own experiences and try to build some skills moving forward as well. All right. I think we've already established what our next review hearing is going to be, but just to reiterate, Tuesday, October 22nd at 1:30, we'll come together again for our third review, second permanency planning hearing. And unless there's any questions, that's all for today.
Your Honor, did you make a ruling about dad's visits?
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Good question. So my concern about allowing unfettered, unsupervised visits at this time is that I really don't have a good update from John Bailey or from his individual counselor on whether or not we've seen any benefit to the dynamics around domestic violence. I do have the indications in some Veritas assessments that that might be a risk-free environment. Ms. Heiss, what was your specific recommendation on that?
Your Honor, I do think he's ready for unsupervised visits. These children are verbal, and so from before to after visits, if they have anything that happened, they have a placement to talk to, they have their mother to talk to. I think they're sufficiently prepared for, and all the trauma assessments say that the bond is secure. They all want to trust that mom and dad are getting their issues together, but I don't think that resources would be appropriately used in continuing to supervise. Maybe in addition, we could supervise a visit a week, but I think they're ready for some expanded time and unsupervised, in my opinion.
All right, that's well articulated, and I think well guided by the opinions of the fellow experts we have in this case. And so the court order will also reflect that I'll give DHHS the discretion, or the agency rather, the discretion to incorporate unsupervised parenting time for Mr. Deakins. And I would ask also for a family team meeting to develop that plan, of course, separately from the one with Ms. Deakins on what's going to be happening with the return of the child, the middle child, and visits moving forward as well. So Ms. Madrid will have her work cut out for her on both parents, but I think that would probably be best. So again, a family team meeting, discretion to incorporate unsupervised parenting time. I'll look for updates on that as well at the next meeting. Other questions?
What time was the October 22nd review?
1:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I just, so we don't run into any issues, can I request that the order just specifically state that the agency has discretion to return Stormy to Ms. Deakins' care, obviously under the supervision of the department, but then also with the discretion to begin FRP or family reunification services, please.
Yes, I can put in the order to incorporate family reunification services, certainly. My concern, Ms. Thomas, with what you've proposed for return is that there really is there's no guidance for that in the court rules. The court rules, of course, allow for a notification and a period of objection with regard to return of the child to the care of a parent. So in order to ensure that our record and the file is clear, you have two options. Number one, I will issue the official order today, which indicates the return, understanding that before that's fully executed, that she needs to do that family team meeting, and then there would be a transition period, which I think the court rule the court order in the attachment would adequately spell out. But for purposes of what's officially happening, your options are either I give you an order that says Stormy is returned to the care of mom, or she still remains in relative care placement, and then you utilize the court rule process.
Yeah, and I believe,
Otherwise,
as you
no.
have stated, as you have stated it, that's sufficient.
Okay, all right.
Thank you
That
so
was
much.
all right, that's what I've tried to explain that as fast as I can in our order as well as the attachment. Any other questions? All right, thank you, everyone. Good luck. We'll see you October 22nd at 1:30.
Thank you, Your Honor.